Well, good morning. It is Tuesday. It's not Friday. I usually do a Friday talk, but I ran out of time last week. So um, this talk is going to be a review of last week. Um, and as a subtitle here, From Idea to Innovation to Crossing the Chasm, and we'll cover that in a little more depth as we go through. So let me just walk to one of the. I generally like to point at things that I've posted in the week that I've caught the most attention. And this one, this Geospatial Commission article seemed to resonate with folks. Reading the title, Geospatial Commission announces up to £4 million for second phase of transport location data innovation competition. Gosh, that's a long sentence. But basically, the Geospatial Commission have put some money forward, focused on transportation and innovation. And it's a really interesting article. And I will add to this that there are some fascinating things going on in the UK. And I'm not just saying that because that's where I'm from. Um, Ordnance Survey, Knowledge Transfer Network, Catapult, Geospatial Commission. There's some really innovative, forward-thinking things going on in the geospatial world coming out of the UK. So I'm quite impressed. And this announcement was again something that people found interesting, and I certainly did as well. You know, money into innovation. So, talking of innovation, if you're not part of the Geospatial Innovation Network, you should be. Barbara Ransom set that one up. Um, and Barbara posts some really interesting things, and Barbara and I chat back and forth. Um, she posted something this morning, which is going to be the theme of what I'm going to talk about here. Actually, is this notion of ideas and innovation, and I'm just going to read it. Innovation is the application of ideas that are novel and useful. So, if you want to just go look at the rest of that, what Barbara writes there, it's interesting. But I kind of wanted to touch on that because I think ideas and innovation are critical at the minute, and I suspect that's why Barbara actually mentioned that. So idea, innovation, scale. Let's go there. So let's just start at the beginning, as I like to do. There are three types of geospatial solution providers at the minute. There are those that build platforms, and ArcGIS and Esri, there's an excellent example of a platform. ArcGIS Online is a SaaS-based platform. I mean, and really, platforms are there. They're really providing you the pieces to put in place to build solutions. Ultimately, that's kind of what it is. So whether it's a map or whether it's a mobile application or whether it's a web application, etc., all the pieces are there in a platform to do that. Up42, an example based in Germany, who are doing that in more the sort of 2.0 world. So some interesting platforms that are out there and people providing platforms. Solutions I would put down as kind of point solutions. So I'd always sort of think of those. They may be built on top of a platform, but they're very focused on a particular problem. And they're a simple way to arrive at a solution. So instead of being all the tools, you know, all the Lego that a platform is, they're a piece that solves a particular problem. You know, 1, 2, 3, I'm done and I've got the answer to my question. So there's lots of folks now that are focused on specific problems to solve in a simple way. And then there's service providers as well. And again, again, I know the Esri well very well. There are a lot of folks that are in that service space, so they actually provide support to configure and set up not only the platform, but also they help configure the pieces that are the specific pieces of that platform. So there are three really traditional places that geospatial fits. But let's look at the problem. In the geospatial 1.0 world, and again, by definition, sorry for repetition that people heard me say this before, geospatial 1.0 is really the where we've been with geospatial. So it's those that are focused on sort of the map making, map generation pattern, some of the platforms that are out there. Again, traditionally used in the public sector and those that have got GIS and remote sensing departments. So a loose definition, but that's kind of how I define geospatial 2.0. In that world, and this isn't just me saying this, a lot of the time we're talking to one another. So GIS people like to talk to GIS people in GIS departments. That's not necessarily been a problem historically, but increasingly it's more of a problem today. Why? Because we're trying to now get geospatial out of just the GIS department, out from within those folks that get it to those folks that don't get it but have problems. So, there's a lot of talk in the 1.0 world about how do we get GIS technology, how do we get GIS solutions and geospatial solutions out of the mapping and GIS department. Same with applying remote sensing. So there's kind of a new challenge there. In the 2.0 world, and again, by definition, 2.0 is really leveraging the new data sets that we're delivering from miniaturized sensors. So whether it be Earth observation, satellite, IoT, LiDAR, etc., etc., we've got these new massive stream of location-based data, and we've also got artificial intelligence and machine learning to process that. So it's less an expert-centric world like 1.0, which is built around GIS analysts and remote sensing experts. 2.0 is sort of moving into the industrial 4.0, fourth industrial revolution automation world. So it kind of fits there. I've written lots about this stuff if you want to read about it. But a lot of times when I work with these guys and talk to these guys, they're really focused on building solutions before they understand the problem. So I always put it as solutions chasing problems, or if we build it, they will come. That classic, I always remember that film when I came to America with Kevin Costner. So there are a couple of challenges there. One, in the 1.0 world, we're really talking to one another. How do we widen that conversation? And in the 2.0 world, and I'm generalizing there, but how do we start with problems and not actually build solutions? And in the 2.0 world, a lot of those folks are technologists. They're data guys and technologists. So that's sort of the heart of that problem. So there's the question, how do we widen the use of geospatial data and tech to solve problems? And that's really moving it more broadly. And that's really where the opportunity that we often talk about is in geospatial. Everything is organized geographically, people and places. And the data and the technology that we work with is focused around that. So in many ways, geospatial, remember geospatial means place on Earth. So it's a study of a location. A lot of the challenges that we face in today's world are centered around geospatial. But again, we're still very narrow in its use. It's still very much centered on organizations that have expertise in-house and those departments that get the value. So let's talk about the iPhone very quickly. There's lots of talk about the iPhone and Steve Jobs and Apple and all that good stuff. I'm not going to go there. What I do find interesting, and again, it's a conversation I've had more than once with folks in the GIS world and the remote sensing world. We really like talking about the guts of the iPhone. We really like talking about what's inside it. We love talking about buffering and points, lines, polygons, and geodatabases, and on and on and on and on. We like all the technical stuff, all the data and the challenge of the data. So that's good when we're having our internal conversations, but to the wider world, that's meaningless. Nobody really cares about that stuff apart from us. The way Apple designed the iPhone was not talking about the inner workings of the iPhone. What they did was they built something that they knew had a use, and they validated, and I'll use that word again in a minute. They found the problem, validated it, and built something which they knew was, well, they knew as best a guess as they could make was going to be successful, and it's been wildly successful. So let's stay with that thought. So if you haven't read the book, and I've mentioned it more than once, Geoffrey Moore's written a brilliant book. It's really a marketing book, but it's more than a marketing book. It's really talking about how do you cross the chasm? How do we take ideas, innovation, and cross the chasm and scale it? That's really the focus of the book. So let's talk about that stuff. I mean, lots of things start with ideas, and going back to what Barbara said, an idea is just in one's head. And often an idea is focused on a problem. So if you've got an idea, or in a world of the iPhone, there was an idea that started out there, but before anything was built, the problem had to be validated. No point in building something without going out there and talking to people that might buy this thing, whether it solves a problem. So that's really the first part of the idea piece is having an idea about a problem and validating that problem. The innovation piece is really how you tackle that problem. At least my interpretation of that is, and Barbara's definition is slightly different, but I look at it in terms of how do we build something that solves that problem? That's kind of the innovation piece. And often innovation is, in our world, is centered around data, technology stacks, artificial intelligence algorithms that can analyze that and process that. So innovation is really combining these elements to arrive at a solution. But if you haven't validated that solution, again, that's a problem. So validate the idea first, innovate and validate the solution second. And you'll see within this, if you've not read the lean startup approach to things, this is very much that methodology. Then cross the chasm. So crossing the chasm is really commercializing and scaling. And again, it's a different conversation. If you've actually found the problem, you validate a solution, crossing the chasm is really, Geoffrey Moore talks about this notion of a niche that you can dominate. And his analogies are during the Second World War, the Allies invaded the Normandy beaches and they chose particular beaches to attack, ones they thought they could win, and they did win them. And obviously their bigger goal was Western Europe, but you have to start with those smaller pieces to grow from there. So that's really what crossing the chasm is about. And really, to me, those are the three essential elements of success within the world of geospatial as we try to explore and widen the use of geospatial technology. It's really based around those three things. They're critical. Whoops, that slid off. But one of the things I'm noticing is that what we really need is we need big picture thinkers and doers to enable what we've just been talking about here. So as solution providers, whether you're service providers, whether you're platform builders, whether you're point solution folks, the things I see as critical, again, I apologize, some of this is just running off the screen a little bit. I think that, and I'm one of these people, so I would say this, but staff who understand both the technology and new customers, I think it's really important to actually put people in positions to actually get where we've been, understand how things are evolving today that's changing, and then how, most importantly, those new customers, understanding those new customers. So there has to be a really important customer connection. A lot of times I find that organizations are they're very focused on particular swim lanes, and again, I'm generalizing here. So you've got the sales folks, you've got the marketing folks, you've got the product folks, you've got the delivery folks. I mean, everyone's kind of in their own swim lanes. And when I look at jobs that are advertised, more often than not, it's within those particular swim lanes. But I think that as we live through this world of change and the enabling technologies that we've got now, again, I think that the cloud, I think the ability to, these new data that we've got, AI, machine learning's maturity, we've only just got that stuff. So now what do we do with it? And it really demands that we are not just in our own swim lane. We have to have folks that are in a place where they're able to discover, experiment, and validate. And that experiment word really, again, comes from the lean startup world. In fact, I've read in books, you need a chief experiment officer. CEO should be the chief experiment officer. And, you'll see here about 3M and other big companies that have kind of put that in place. But I think that we're in an unusual place, and it means that we have to adapt to these unusual times. If we just have these very stovepipe groups, you're really not building out those that can sit above that and start thinking about that path forward. But it's not just anybody. It's just not an MBA that comes out of college with these business ideas. In my view, you need to have people that actually do understand where we've been. You've got to have geospatial folks. You've got to have those guys in the mix. Those guys that don't have to be developers, but they have to understand the technology. But they most importantly need to be able to connect with the customers, because it all really starts with the customers. And again, that's run off the screen, but I apologize. I think that what we need are individuals who know yesterday and are building tomorrow, and hand in hand with customers. I mean, that's kind of how I'll finish this. To me, that's what's needed in lots of those solution providers out there. I don't really care if it's a 1.0, those that are focused in the geospatial 1.0 world, or the 2.0 world. That's what you need. And I look at some of the existing 1.0 world, and I see them beginning to explore this widening world of geospatial, and some stand out that are beginning to look in a much more flexible way about their business models and how they're going to move things forward. So they're leaning on, in some cases, service models which are continue to be successful, continue to have their own challenges, and they're beginning to wonder, okay, how do we get this technology out of the GIS department and more widely in our existing organizations. And some of the newer guys are attacking it directly. They're going after insurance companies, retailers, agriculture, etc., etc. But I still would strongly argue that if they don't know yesterday, if they don't know where the 1.0 world's been, they don't understand the OGC, if they don't understand all that stuff, it's a much more challenging world because lots of things have already been done that you really should know about. Don't reinvent the wheel. So I think the individuals that know yesterday are looking to build tomorrow hand in hand with customers are going to be the winners of tomorrow. And again, I will always say, validate, validate, validate. The only way you know if there's a problem is by validating it with a customer. The only way you know that your solution is going to solve that problem is by validating it with customers. The only way you cross the chasm is by understanding customers and how you scale things. So everything starts and ends with customers. That's my Tuesday, Friday talk. Thanks for watching.